Okay, Hubris, turn 25, and let's go straight in to the main event. It's been a while coming, but here it is. The forces of Saramatia against the remaining forces of Calum. Calum basically has a mage blob from their capital, including a couple of Eagle Kings, a lot of level 1s, and this Holy 4 Prophet, which is kind of nifty. These are the Guardian Spirits that you see on the Calum line. I might just quickly, actually, let's just... I can't do it now. I'll turn the sound down after this battle. Anyway, mass cavalry charge from Saramatia straight through the gate. They sent Bone Fiends in first. Those are all going to get banished because there's a lot of holy banish power at the back here. But the Saramatian Lancers charging through the evocations, some of them are going to go for it. And with lance charges against enemy mages... Oh, actually... Danger close magical bombardment from the Kalian Mage Corps. Danger close shockwaves, thunder strikes, everything. They're just calling it in at close range. But I think that it's going to be that all she wrote soon as the Auropata come in and clean up. Although, you have to admit, that Mage Corps did its damnedest to the end. So, Saramatia lost 14 of its 24 Lancers, all of its, well, almost all of its Shades, all of its Bone Fiends, and 5 of its Sacred Auropata, and interestingly, they lost their hero, Skurgu, I presume? I'm not sure how that umlaut's meant to work. Their hero, which is interesting, hard to replace. Not sure if he was twice spawned, but that's actually an unfortunate loss. Calum, of course, loses everything. 3 Ares Seraphs, 2 Seraphines, 2 Eagle Kings, but the numbers are not so much important because in Vath, Agartha walked in and forced the 1 Eagle King they had here to retreat, which left Calum permanently vanquished without any provinces left. Sorry, it wasn't just Agartha. Calum would have lived on one more turn if not for the fact that Balin Starlin, as Relay, in typical opportunistic Water Nation fashion, decided to just walk on and say, you know, Province 163 is going to be mine. So for no real pain and for a couple of provinces of gain, Relay stakes out a little more territory, and as a result, Calum is no more. Now, even if Calum hadn't been eliminated this turn, they would have been left with 1 mage in a province. Like, it just would have ended next turn. But look, well fought, particularly well fought. Right at the end there. Calum had a rough start this game. They had a rough start because, if you'll remember, they made an early play at the throne, and that threw off their expansion timing. It destroyed their expansion armies, and Calum's expansion can go both ways anyway. So they were really behind after the first couple of turns, after they made that error. They sort of clawed their way back, only to be double-teamed by 2 very, well, not very powerful, but certainly quite powerful nations that were in a good position. Saramatia hit them like a truck. They had Agartha coming in from the south, and they always knew you had an opportunistic relay that wasn't going to be much help either, that was going to poach as much territory as possible. So it was a tough run for Calum, also because the mammoths that they made for expansion are, of course, pretty much useless against a force like you were going to fight from Saramatia, where you've got a bunch of really high defense, hard-hitting, lance-charging, multi-attack cavalry. Like, they're just going to mince mammoths. So that's all she wrote for Calum. They have been eliminated from the game. Other than that, there was a battle in Summer Bay. We don't have to watch this. It looks like a reinforcing. This looks like someone was just dragging around. Actually, no commander. So these are guys who were probably stranded because their commander died, and as a result, they were stuck in Summer Bay. That makes sense. So these were just the left behinds. 36 Helot Peltasts, 1 Gigante Hoplite unit, 1 Helot Hoplite unit. This looks super one-sided. And in a sense it is. And taking the province is obviously very, very valuable. But when you think about it, the Helot Peltasts are only worth 8. The 1 Stormcaller that got killed is worth 205. So it's not as horrifically one-sided as you'd think, just reasonably one-sided. Summer Bay is a good province. It's changed hands. And GC's going to want to get Enceladus out of here. Enceladus in his first generation Meconi form before he becomes hideous and scary, and then even more hideous and scary. Yeah, this is just him in his ordinary Archon form. doing site searching, I would presume, he would not want to be murdered by this Viridian stack. So he's going to need to get out of there. We're not going to dwell on anyone's strategic position because I want to move through the turns. We'll do a roundup. Let's do a roundup towards the end of what this episode will be. But for the moment, Calum is now out. That leaves Saramatia and Agartha both unengaged. They can either go at it on their current borders, or they can find another target together, or they can agree to go their separate ways. Relays awkwardly here on the side. And we still have uncommitted nations. We still have Hinnom uncommitted, Pangaea uncommitted. Helheim is nominally committed against Beratos, but has no border with Beratos, so can't really do anything, even if they wanted to. It's interesting. A lot of now uncommitted actors. Yomi, massive in terms of territory, still Yomi, uncommitted nation. So we'll see where everyone sort of shapes up as we move into Phase 2, the second set of wars for this game. See you in turn 26, I presume. Okay, it's turn 26, and not much happened, but something did happen that I'm going to have to go back to the players and find out. So, this turn, the big Saramatian army appears to have gone maybe back, or it's still in this fort. The main Agarthan army has just marched right onto Calum, which was barely PD'd by Saramatia, and cracked it. One turn cracked it. Now, Agartha didn't attack the side provinces. They're not marching the stack of sacreds that they have in their capital up, but this is still the vast majority of their army. I need to find out really quickly, because one of two things has happened. Agartha has decided to just stab Saramatia in the face while they've got their forces on that border. Just keep rolling. Don't spend Pale 1 turns walking slowly to someone else's border. Nah, just stab him in the face now. Or somehow Agartha has managed to convince Saramatia, despite Saramatia doing most of the fighting and being the one to seize the capital, to give Agartha Calum. Those are the only two combinations I can think of. And I'm not sure which is more likely. I feel like Agartha stabbing is more likely, because you'd have to turn a heck of a deal in order to convince someone who initiated the war, started the war, and seized the objective to then give you the objective. Calum's a good province. It has good scales on it. There's a bunch of gem generation here, as you'd expect from an early game capital. This is not a bad location. It would also be Agartha's, fourth fort? And it was serving as Saramatia's, third? Saramatia might be a little bit behind on infrastructure, actually. Which makes sense if they were going all cav all the time and even built some elephants. Elephants are expensive, they kill your gold economy, and they do have a huge stack of cavalry. But yeah, I would have thought Calum would be very important to Saramatia and wouldn't be keen to give it away. Anyway, we'll see what happens there. Yomi cleared some poor independents, and some other independents attacked Relay and threw them out of this province here. The mage retreated to Great Blue, 23. No income from here, and no way out for this mage until these trogs are cleared. So, Balon's opportunism is not going as well on this flank. No action from Atlantis against Jabolba. Kind of disappointed. Maneuvering on the Makoni Viridian front. So we're summoning it looks like we're summoning Serum again. We don't appear to be blood hunting our capital. If we are, we're patrolling very heavily in order to power that. So small army, but it's Viridian Spearmen, and they're starting to get the Serum together. Capital, big army, Spearmen, Colossi, Bride of the Gods, which is a hero. Yeah. Big army. Ulm doesn't want a piece of it. Makoni doesn't appear to want a piece of it. Makoni is in standoff position as they gather new armies. You can see all these forces are going to combine, right? In order to make one big stack and push again. Ulm's got a secondary stack of Undead and Great Bear. So some summon-based chaffing going on over here. Are they recruiting Atavi, or are those mercs? They're recruiting Atavi archers. Okay. Okay. Alright, so EA Ulm has monkey archers. good for them. But yeah, no, big question for this turn is Calum 146. I'm going to save my discussion on my thoughts on this matchup, EA Saramatia, EA Agartha, until we see if this is actually a war. And for that reason, I actually think we're going to race straight through to turn 27, because we don't have a lot of war going on, except for maybe we do, and I really want to find out. Yeah, so let me jump ahead. Okay, it's turn 27, and Agartha did in fact storm Calum. I did some asking around, and this is a stab. It is a legitimate stab to the face. Agartha seems to have made the judgment that since its troops were there, and it has such limited strategic mobility, and it could crack in one turn, and Calum is such a valuable objective, which I'm sure we'll see reflected when we do the graphs at the end of this episode, that a war right now is actually advantageous. And I don't believe it's going to be a solo war. I think we're going to see other people move into this. Agartha seems confident. Now, I think Agartha does need allies because they're going to struggle a little bit against Saramatia. It's an interesting matchup. What does Agartha have going for it? Agartha has Mind Blasters, has fantastic siege capabilities. They've got an Awake Pretender that is available there, the Earth Serpent, although the Earth Serpent's not great against most Saramatian threats. And they've got some big center point casters, although I don't think they have much research for them at the moment. What does Saramatia have? Well, Saramatia is much better in the raiding game. They can create small groups of Oropada or even Lancers. They can get behind the slow Agarthan lines, because finding an Agarthan army that moves more than one square a turn is difficult. So Saramatia should be able to raid. Once they get their communion capabilities online, they're very dangerous in some of the better Skelly spammers, for example. They've got dangerous magic capabilities. They can eventually move into blood, but right in the here and now, Sacred Cavalry are just so good in Dominions. Sacred Cavalry and even non-Sacred Cavalry, horse-mounted troops are generally very good because of the combination of the fact that defense is a very good stat, particularly early in the game, or whenever in the game the opponent's strategy depends on hitting you with a close combat weapon. So they have very good defense. They usually have multiple attacks. They don't sacrifice that much attack density because you fit 2 to a square. If you have 2 attacks, you're still better than infantry. And they don't get harassed down as much. You have the 1 harass penalty rather than the 2 harass penalty that an infantryman or even a giant tends to suffer. So cavalry, like the Oropada, are very, very good. And even non-sacred cavalry are quite good. So Saramatia's got advantages in its column. Agartha, in its blob, however, if we look at this blob, has 65 Great Olms. That's 65 Mind Blasts per turn. This battle looks like it was over just because the Mind Blasters basically killed everything and the rest ran away. You can't dodge a Mind Blast, you can't outrange a Mind Blast, all you can do is MR resist a Mind Blast. And normally they're a force multiplier, right? It's the paralysis that matters. Well, if you throw enough Mind Blasts out there, you can explode some heads, and that's evidently what these Great Olms are doing. So this actual death stack itself is pretty tough. The Pale One warriors have enough hit points and a little bit of prot. They'll stand there for a little while, but they'll stand there all the longer if there are 65 Mind Blasters supported by 30 archers and a big Earth Serpent that can do blocking maneuvers, particularly if it can get its Dominion over. Which it has. They have 3 ticks of Dominion over Calum, so they are in Bless at the moment. So EU4 Olm memes is actually going to be reasonably dangerous. Either way, this war would infuriate me as Agartha because I can't wait for Calum to start playing around behind the... Saramatia to start playing around behind the lines. If you're Agartha, you kind of just need to take big punchy fights that you can win and see openings. And when you see openings to take castles, take the castles, because your advantage is going to be in your obscene amounts of siege strength, not in your strategic or tactical, for that matter, mobility. So, new war over here. Who's likely to get involved? Well, contenders are, you can have Relay, Yomi, or Pangaea, Helheim, or Hinnom, all have the capability to come in on Saramatia if they want to. But Hinnom, Hinnom and Yomi could also come in on Agartha if they wanted. Atlantis, technically, but Atlantis is busy with the bats, so there is that. I say Atlantis is busy with the bats, but this turn, a Basalt King with an Eye Shield, a Knife of the Damned Ice. So this is Construction 2 Thug Kit. The Eye Shield makes you go blind, so it doesn't block the attacks the way something like a Vine Shield does, but it does mean that eventually the attackers are going to go blind, which makes them much worse at hitting you. The Knife of the Damned, its AP, it's got some attack stats on it, I guess. It does magic damage, it curses people. I'm not sure why we're wielding a Knife of the Damned, but apparently we are. Yeah, so just a high proc Basalt King has walked in and killed the PD around Beratos' fortress, which I find funny. This has got to... Either this is just some trolly behavior from Mandar, because obviously he can't break the fort, or the more likely scenario is GC is involved in this somehow. If GC's asked for a favor and had someone send in a thug to lock down the fort to be followed up by an army, then, yeah, well played. I still don't see evidence that Orm is consolidating. They're bringing big armies together, but I don't see evidence of a force that can beat this giant Beridian stack on their capital. In fact, if anything, as Beratos, I probably would have been a little more aggressive by now. I can't see forces. I presumably have scouts out. These provinces should be counter-rated by now. These should all be counter-rated. It might be he doesn't want to get a border with Helheim again, but Helheim can always stealth through if they want to get to you. And if you're desperately worried about that, go up this way, fight Orm, reunite with your secondary fort, or at least push south and try and tell Relay to, rack off back to the ocean. Tell them to go fight Atlantis or something. But geez, that's a big force of... that's a lot of Slave Guardians. That's a lot of Slave Guardians. So, interesting. Okay, so not much movement in this war over here other than the Atlantean poke. The big news, obviously, is going to be the Agartha-Sarmatia war, which we have to watch with interest. I'm so interested, actually, that I might cut this episode here, wait till the next turn drops, download that, and include that as part of this episode, because that might... I think that'll tell more of the story. So... give me a bit, I'll come back when the next turn drops, and we'll have a look at how the first turns of this war shape up. But taking Calum, huge win. Okay, it's turn 28, and there's been some manoeuvring in this Sarmatia war. The main Agarthan army came out here, Retha 155, took it, basically no resistance. The main Sarmatian army has come back here to 162. So it's now facing off against the Agarthan force. The raiding force of Sarmatia, the small unit of cavalry that was here, actually moved south. And in so doing, they caught a group of poor mercenaries that were going to link up with what I presume is the Agarthans' consolidating reinforcements. So the Agarthans are going to pipe these troops up here behind this army, and that's going to give them what they think they need for the final push. 10 ancient stone hurls. That's interesting if they're there for what I think they are. Let's see. I think those are cavalry killers. I think this is a cavalry killing tactic, but we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, Oropatas versus Meros and Vinemen. It's never going to be close. It isn't close. It can't be close. So, let's watch the Oropata bless. And then they mow. They mow through. No power in the verse can stop them. They have 24 defense. So this is Blood Surge. 24 defense. 24. And they only lose 1 harassment for each attack. 17 attack, so they ain't missing. They do 19 damage with their primary, 15 with their secondary. Their effective protection against mundane is 21. Ignore this 14. They have their tattoos awakened. And they have... oh, and they have Undying +2. That's handy. Anyway, they're rocking invulnerability 10, so they normally have no natural protection. Total protection v mundane attacks is now actually 21. So this unit, is as heavily armoured as an Ormish Black Plate infantryman. is resistant to shock, to fire, and to cold, and to poison, can see in the dark, reinvigorate, so its actual encumbrance is 3, not 4, has a magic weapon, has the defense skill of like a tricked out elf ponyman, has very high attack, and hits moderately hard, and doesn't run away. The MR12 is the only thing where I'm like, that's not optimal. Also, they're fast. So, yeah, Oroparta are dangerous. 49 kills, 0 losses, and the Obsidian Waste with its 4 gem generation has fallen. These units are now kind of trapped though, so they'll need to extricate themselves. Province 138 is probably a reasonable move. Or if you want to be a pain, you can try and take the long way out, evacuation-wise. You could try to go 118, 12, 130, raid your way back to friendly lines. But you need to account for the fact that Tir Nanug has units that can move up, but they might not be aware of these units, who, if they move here next turn, can attempt to make an intercept at 120. Although that said, I'm not sure 20 Ancient Stone Hurlers is a particularly good match for an even number of Oroparta. I feel like the Ancient Stone Hurlers, if they're going to do what I think they're going to do, need a significant base of numbers over the cavalry they're fighting in order for that to work. So, interesting, but more interesting. Yes, I said more interesting. Pangaea attacked Saramatia. So this explains Agartha's gung-ho-ness, their aggressiveness, their keenness for the fight. Pangaea has decided to grab their white centaurs and come in and tear out the north of the Saramatian Empire. For Pangaea, I think this is a fantastic move. If they don't feel like they're ready to fight Helheim, and in my view, they should be fighting Helheim with Hinnom. They should get Ulm out of this bloody war. Ulm's not going to get anything more out of that bloody war. Get Ulm in, and the 3 of you probably can fight Helheim. Probably, because White Centaurs are a sufficiently decent match for Hellhoundings in sufficient numbers. But this is a decent secondary play, because Saramatia's troops are all going to be in the south. They're going to have the aggroness against the Agarthans, so it's difficult to convince them to move troops away from an enemy that's right there to go defend a more distant part of the Empire. There is an army bordering them here. They'd have to move 3 steps to be bordering an enemy army in the north. The big prize, the capital of Saramatia, which has some nice sites. I mean, there's death gems are useful to everyone, and a small blood income to help supplement Pan's small blood income. Pan might be able to get somewhere in blood. And the fact, as I said, White Centaurs are a decent match for the Saramatian cavalry. You can sort of go cavalry to cavalry. You're not going to win a rock, paper, scissors because you're both playing rock. But if your enemy only has a couple of rocks and you've got a lot of rocks, then you're going to win. So Pangaea in the game. Need to get these maenads and goats and crap moved up, though, to help siege the capital. But the prize, Saramatia itself, is here. It's vulnerable. It's under-defended. So there's a room for Pangaea to make lots of gain with comparatively little risk. You can bet that the relay troops over here will now move in. So as soon as they hear that this is happening, Bal and Stalin is going to move in and occupy 186 and probably try and clear out as much of this territory as he can, as long as he can avoid a conflict with an actual army. The only point in which that might get complicated is if this Dione decides to come south. So it's clear that Saramatia has probably lost the diplomatic game. It seems unlikely that you'd be able to enlist anyone else to say, hey, come fight a coalition of Agartha and Pangaea with me. That seems less likely. Geez, even Hinnom. So Hinnom's just cleared off these independents, right? They've killed these... Geez, they lost 40 Avim doing it. What's that? 1,000 gold? So that's painful for a province that only makes 12. Although, 4 gems. I'm pretty sure if you gave people the power to spend 1,000 gold on a ritual and create a permanent income of 2 earth and 2 death, they'd probably do it. Plus, you got to take that province eventually. 12 gold something. You'll patrol it down. My point is more... these provinces are exposed too. And he won't know it, but this is a 3-gem province right here. So there's even room for Hinnom Nom Nom to come in and Nom 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 some land at, again, comparatively limited risk. Helheim, if they notice, might even be able to compete for Pangaea. So my point is, there's a reason for everyone to dogpile Sarmatia at this point. People don't want Sarmatia getting to the late game. It's bloody. It's a pretty strong nation, so they're not going to like lament if it dies, especially if it dies to like a coalition so nobody gets too strong out of dismembering it. Like if Relay gets, who no one will care about, gets a little bit. Yomi, who people probably don't care about, even though they're big, they're still Yomi, gets a bit. Although it is Hairdelus. Like, don't underestimate Hairdelus. And I'm kind of getting a feel for where he might be going with his Yomi, but I'm going to save that for when he becomes like relevant in the game cycle again. If everyone gets a piece of Sarmatia, they're not a huge threat. So I think Sarmatia's diplomatic situation is dire. It was dire when they didn't establish NAPs with either their northern or southern front earlier before committing to a war, or rather before completing a war that would remove the common cause between them and Agartha. So, ouch. Over on this front, we now have a close standoff. Makoni's army is here. Atlantis is besieging Uzur-Jazran, but will never do any wall damage. Ulm is sitting on a newly constructed fort in Summer Edge. We can see their force here. So what have they got? 138 Axe Warriors, 20 Bears, 16 Mountain Warriors, which are just better Axe Warriors, 16 Ogres, 28 Steel Maidens, which are the Ormish troop I like. Their god, a decent pool of mages, insofar as EA Ulm can be said to have a decent pool of mages. Beratos has a... Okay, so they've got smaller number of bigger mages, and they have 57 Colossi Warriors and 118 of these Beridian Spearmen, who are probably going to lose 1-to-1 with Ormish Axe Warriors unless their javelins get their javelins just right. If you get your javelins just right, you'll kill a bunch of Ormishmen, but those Ormishmen can also throw axes at you, which will do damage. You have a shield, fortunately, so you might survive more of those. But once it gets to close combat, the Ormish troops have 2 attacks. They are higher damage attacks to your 1. The Beridian Spearmen are going to die. Now, the Brides in Waiting can probably rack up some elementals, and that'll complicate things. Plus, they'll be the ones blessing the Colossi Warriors. So, yeah, interesting. I think, properly scripted, either of these armies is capable of winning. Well, now that I look more at the Ormish army, one, it's got the scale. Secondly, you can do interesting things with that Thrice-Horned Boar. Either you can position it and hopefully suck up a lot of the elemental spam if you're expecting that, because elementals are dumb and relatively predictable. Unless they're air elementals. Fire elementals are very easy to predict. Air elementals, kinda. They're birds. They act like birds tactically. You can use it to eat all the elementals, or you could, as long as you gave it bodyguard so it doesn't get like thunder shocked down by size 6 AEs. Or you can send it on a trampling. Like, there are things you can do with that. The troops are decent. The mages, it'll depend on what you have researched. Beratos, the game plan is obvious. Bless the Colossi Warriors. They'll do a lot of the killing. They're extremely tough. They're well blessed. Plus, you can then throw some full-size elementals into the fight, and things suddenly get complicated. So, that's that war. Final war. Because it needs to happen at the end of every episode. At the end of every episode, either Xibalba needs to be placed under siege or freed from siege. Well, this episode ends with Xibalba again being placed under siege. Let's have a look at the new and improved models of Basalt Kings that are being used this time. Oh, okay, so we've got a pretty basic one, albeit an E4. These are pretty basic. These are pretty ghetto, actually. Maybe they're a trap. Like, I don't know why you'd go in with just that. Like, they don't have a solution to poison, which was their problem before. They're very heavily protected. I'll give them that. But that's all I can see, and they're blessed. Anyway, they'll get through the PD, that's obvious. Ooh, maybe Flame Shield's the difference. Maybe they're going to rely on Fire Shield to kill the bats. That'd be interesting, rather than killing the bats one at a time. Anyway, not to hypothesize. Xibalba is once again under siege. Sarmatia, once recently the victorious power, is now under assault from both sides, and Beratos is finally coming out of their fort. Quick, Score graph roundup. I don't care that much about provinces because it doesn't look like it's changed that much. I care about forts. Ormish infrastructure is superior. Income is interesting. Helheim is coming in third. Maconi still second. Who is that in first? Agartha is coming first. Well, I guess that makes sense. Look at the gain they have made over the last few turns. Seizing that new land and taking and then occupying Calum, all that huge boon. Whereas Sarmatia has, you can see the countervailing decline in Sarmatia's fortunes as all of that land has fallen. So Agartha now the wealthiest nation on Earth, followed by GC's Maconi, who are a gold-efficient nation and usually quite poor, so that's an achievement. Helheim, superbly dangerous with their money. This would be Ulm, a cluster of nations in the middle, a poor Beratos, and where's Yomi? Yomi's riding the pine as the bottom of the middle-ranked nations, but Yomi has a massive gold penalty, so they're still huge. Gem incomes, what are we looking at? Yomi has almost caught Helheim. Helheim had a huge surge, and Yomi is now catching up. Maconi coming in third. That'll be Agartha in fourth. Then there's a cluster of the rest, and Beratos. Research. Ooh. Okay. That's not Ulm coming first. That's Relay still. That's impressive. But Ulm's gradient is getting better. So Ulm's research is getting faster over time. The slow powers are the ones you expect, the cluster down here. This is Yomi and Co. who are struggling. Pangaea hasn't really gone in on the research, actually. Pangaea really not researching, and Atlantis barely researching still. Which means so that's because their capital is producing nothing but basalt kings, and those basalt kings are going out to fight or die, or fight then die. They are not hanging around to research, and I'm not sure Atlantis has got a sufficient number of forts producing researchers. So this is really a problem. Even if Atlantis now kills Xibalba, which, you know, they should. They outnumber them freaking 20 to 1 or whatever. Pivoting into proper research is going to be difficult. They'll need to get their act together there. This cluster in the middle, no one's got a major competitive advantage over each other. Is that a... Oh my god, that's Agartha. Everything I just said about Atlantis, apply it to Agartha. They've got no magic. Nothing. And Saramatia's in the middle, which is what I'd expect. Agartha, like, they don't know how to read yet. Their nation is still, like, teaching people how to engrave letters and form them into sounds and words. That's a problem. Agartha's got some really good summons, and I would want access to them soon, but I guess they've just gone... Geez, I don't even know what they've gone, because I understand why Atlantis is way behind. I don't understand why Agartha is way behind. You've got cheap and efficient researchers. You've got a number of forts. Agartha should be researching better. And here's what you need to do if you're Agartha. And let's just say you subbed into this game right now, and you're Agartha, and you say, I'm in a war. That's cool. I'm going to win that. Diplomacy is going to help me. I'm going to be careful. I need to solve my research right now. Start building some bloody engravers or earth readers, whatever you can afford. Go to Ulm and say, hey, items please. They'll sell them to you. Dominion score. Is this Yomi? Yomi increasing its margin, as you expect. Helheim in second, and then everyone else. And finally, army size. We can ignore the Omniscience, because that's just me playing around. Maconi and Ulm still topping the charts. Pangaea's got a big army. Sarmatia is up there too, and its troop quality is through the roof. Agartha's army is third in size, actually, and won't be shit. So the wars we've got, the war we've got on the Eastern Front is actually between some of the larger armies, and larger and more competent armies. The battle in the West is between army number 1 and army number 2, and army number, like, way down there. Atlantis' army is tiny. Absolutely tiny. Relays is not. Because Atlantis has been relying on the SCs. Atlantis should roll out its troops. Fewer SCs, more troops. Your troops are better than the bats. So I would be massacring the bats using the Atlantean troops, supported, of course, by some fear-inducing basalt kings. That sort of combined arms approach probably give you the better run. At this stage, a final observation, I promise, because I'm aware that I might be rambling and taking this into the realm of strategy rather than just commentary. If I'm at relay at this point, I have an army that is significantly larger than my neighbor. My neighbor is already at war with someone who refuses to quit. I have a tremendous research advantage. Huge research advantage. The gap between Relay and Atlantis is difficult to comprehend. And I believe in gem income. Oh no, in gem income I'm close. Anyway, but I probably have some gems saved up because I haven't been forging gear for SCs that go off and siege forts or die. I think Relay should attack. I know I'm a diplomatic player and there's huge value in the underwater hug box, but Relay can get some serious relevance in this game by just poking around the edge of these conflicts, but rolling everything it can into this basically empty Atlantean nation and seizing it, and they will have all of that water. They can inherit most of Xibalba's territory de facto. So then at that point, they would have Atlantis' cap, their cap. Potentially they can get Xibalba's cap. They've got a safe area underwater, and this peninsula here, look, just pretend these are water provinces, because they have more water boundaries than they have land boundaries. They're hard to impossible for a land nation to defend, and they're very easy for the water nations to attack. If Relay held the depth and Atlantis and this fort at 147, I just don't know what a hostile nation would be doing to hold those provinces. I just don't see how it happens. So that's my recommendation. Balance Stalin. In the future, if you read this, I'd attack. Thank you all for watching. I'll be back with more of this game soon. I'm enjoying the observation, actually. The diplomatic developments are interesting, as are people's tactical choices. I'm thinking we'll see more larger battles coming up soon, but the key development, I think, for this turn is not Xibalba coming under siege. It's the confirmation that there is a war on against Sarmatia and that it is a coalition effort between, at the very least, Pangaea and Atlantis. Good luck, Sarmatia. You're a good nation and a good player, but you might need a little luck to get out of this one. Cheers.